I'm Narelle Todd.
And I'm Essie Susan Smith.
We are the self-publishing author and marketing duo that has sold over 2 million books. But we didn't start out knowing how to sell books. Fast forward past many failed promotions and a lot of lessons learned, you will see how we went from self-publishing newbies to hitting the New York Times bestsellers list and making the USA Today bestsellers list 19 times and counting. We created the Get My Book Out There podcast to give you simple yet effective marketing strategies to increase readership and book sales, so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, as well as some tips for staying mentally and physically well.
Let's get started.
So today we're going to be talking about branding, and hopefully we're going to be giving some different perspectives on branding, because it's interesting. The more you get into it, the more you learn how branding is a part of both your professional and your personal life, and how the two kind of mesh with each other. So I'd like to say hello to Narelle.
Hello.
Kind of get her feedback on how all of this is going to go about.
Certainly with branding, I reckon it's one of the most fundamentals to anything you do. So particularly with creatives and authors, is something that you need to get right from the very start, or at least have it in place. So traditional things around branding are things like, what are the colors that are associated with you? What's the look and feel? And it's getting those things in place so that it's consistent. And what that does is just warm up your audience to know that when they see certain things, they go, oh, that's Essie Smith. So I know that's her. I feel right, comfortable. And it's almost like less chatter in the person's mind. So they can just look at what is it that, you're trying to say or share with them. So that's why right from the start, it's good to work out what it is that you want to be represented publicly in a visual format. And that's probably the most traditional aspect of branding, and the one that we most talk about, and the one that we most share about. But of course, there's a whole other aspects involved there. We wanted to look at what some of those things are, apart from the traditional ones around, what's your font, what's your colors.
It's funny because I'm not as comfortable with dealing with the more structured understanding of what branding is. So, it's like, oh, I just like that color red. It's not, I don't care what color it is. It's just that color. Or I like black, or, like you said, it's important on the more structured level. For me, it's all anesthetic. So it's what pleases me, what pulls me in, what drives me. And so I'm more focused on the less analytical side of the branding part, because that goes with who I am, and that's part of my branding. That's part of who I am as a person, and it's that creative part. And I look at it and I really like that. I don't care that it's not the exact same color red. It goes with what's going through my head at the moment. Sometimes you have to they kind of abrade against each other, and other times they just kind of flow right into each other and create an even stronger link, I think.
For sure. And I think it's important to recognize the creative aspect in anything that you do. So if you are going off brand, the thing to tie it back in would be to insert your logo, say, into that graphic or a meme or something like that. And that ties in then for, your readership. Oh, this is an Essie Smith. It's certainly important to have consistency in with something. So, if you're changing up your colors, not a big deal. Make sure that your logo's there. That lets people know. Or if you're using your colors, then people are comfortable with that.
And one of the things that I thought it was interesting, there's a part in it, because everyone knows who, Elton John is and his music. And one of the things that really stuck out with me was that everybody was trying to put him into like this little box. It was like, this is how it's done. This is how you play music. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. One of the things he was asking is, how do you take this geeky boy with glasses, and put some soul into him? And one part, they say, well, you've got to forget everything about who you were and reinvent yourself. I don't think that that's necessarily true, because when you look at it, he never had to reinvent himself. He just had to step out of that box that everyone kept trying to put him in. Once he did that, then his branding fit perfectly with them. And I noticed that myself, that in my own personal experience, I have people that at times try to put me into that little box. And I'm like, yeah. And then I just kind of go off and do my own thing. I understand that that is part of who I am, and I accept it. And I'm not afraid of embracing that part of my branding. That, people tease me about having squirrels running around in my brain at the control center. Yeah, I do. And it's okay. It's okay to be different. It's okay to step out there, because that goes with my personality, with the way I write, with the way I approach things in a creative way. It works well when I have somebody that's like you, that are able to work with me and my creativity, but you're also able to help organize me so that I don't get overwhelmed by it. So I think when you're working with your branding, is understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, and then finding somebody.
I think authenticity in branding is important. So this is for particularly creatives, authors who want to be known as them. So if you're writing to market, then that could be, and possibly is, a different kind of branding experience. But if you're writing as you and you want to build your brand, then authenticity definitely is important, and you need to be true to who you are, because in your interactions with your readers, that's going to come through anyway. People are going to discover, as with you, that the squirrels run the show and that you do go from thing to thing. So it just makes sense to incorporate that into your branding. Don't be afraid of going, this is me, I'm different. That's okay. I loved a recent thing I read about Stan, who wrote the Marvel comics.
Yes, Stan Lee.
Yes, Stan Lee. And he was saying about the X-Men that part of the reason he wrote that was to show people that being different was okay. It didn't make you bad. And I really love that, because I think that's what it is about. Each one of us being comfortable with our branding enough to be able to go, well, this is who I am. I'm different, or, this is what makes me special, unique, or maybe not special and unique. You might just be the same as everybody else, but there's something that is you, and that's what people will gravitate to, and that's what you have to let people see as part of authentic branding.
And I notice that when I'm writing, I'll get new ideas. I may end up writing a story that's in a brand new series, or it may be that I do jump from one series to another and another, and then take time to come back. But I'll always come back. That's not the problem. Readers can sometimes get frustrated that, I've got 2 books left in this series, or 1 book left, or I haven't written the second or third book in this other one. But there's always a reason for it. And it's, whether it's the fact that I'm not ready to write it, or the characters aren't ready for me to share it. I think that's a big point, is I have to be ready for that story to unfold. And I found that my strengths come from coming back to a series and seeing it from a fresh point of view. I find them exciting and challenging, and I want to know what's going to happen. You start writing the same series over, and you're just writing one book after another, after another, after another. I won't say that it loses its magic, but it becomes almost emotionally draining, because you're lost in this world. And so you need to pull back sometimes and go to a new world, visit that, and then come back. And I think also what you were talking about with Stan Lee is, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to try new things or expand, to a different horizon. For me, I try to look at aliens in a totally different way. We see most of the movies that we watch, it's always these really bad aliens. And yes, I do have some bad aliens, but I also have a lot of really cool ones that are not here to totally destroy the earth, but to help make it better. Or where you do have a bad alien, but then you've got the good aliens trying to help defeat the bad ones. So I think not something that you see, except in movies or series like Star Wars or Star Trek. There's so few. And it's like, why? Because these are, if we were to live in this massive universe and we discovered we aren't the only ones out there, there's a good possibility that we would be in relationships like this.
And that's why it's important to be true to you. And we've had this conversation many times because it's obviously much easier to market a complete series. And, where one book comes out every 3 weeks or, or so, the traditional way of publishing. So it's easier often to do things in that systematic, rote sort of place. I think also challenges because you'll often see that the stories with authors who do that tend to become the same. And it's that,
Yes.
I call it like the old Mills and Boon. There was a set formula, and you often see that set formula come out in books
Yes.
like that. So there's minuses and there's pluses for whichever. But I think the important part is that you are true to what's right for you. You need to write the way is true to you. And then you work your branding around that and you work your marketing around that. You do the best you can, but people are going to connect with you because they know that at the heart of it, you're real and you're authentic.
You're doing this in the long run. It doesn't mean that your branding won't change over time as you change. But the biggest thing is not getting so stuck that you can't do that change.
Yes.
And not to be afraid to push the limits of the type of branding that you want to do. If you find that one thing, what is it they say, your taste buds change like every 7 years? Well, don't be afraid to let your branding kind of evolve over that 7-year period as well.
Yes.
And so that, because as a person, you grow the more you do something. And I think that that's also important, is to recognize that we've seen it in major brands. Coca-Cola, I don't know how many different ways that they've changed up, but just to use them as an example.
Yes.
So don't be afraid to, continue to revise, revisit, and grow as you grow as a writer or as a person in whatever business you do. Don't be afraid to let your branding grow with you.
Absolutely. It needs to change just like we change. Your branding needs to go with you. Yes. So if you are struggling with defining what your brand is, don't think of it as something you're tied into for life. Start with something. It's all, you've got to get started with that. That's the most important thing. If you stay still doing nothing with your branding, then that's going to negatively impact you. So at least start with something, even if it's a logo, in the traditional sense. Start to talk about common themes, or there's different ways that you can brand out. So if you don't want to go to the expense of creating a logo because you're not sure what that is, look at other things that you can do to start to create for yourself the brand.
And I've noticed that, since when I first started in 2012 up until now, I've noticed the changes in, I still have the basic coloring, but, my logo has changed horrendously, but, in little increments. So it has evolved as I have evolved, and understanding myself better, appreciating the knowledge that I've gained. And one of the things, people ask me is, in fact, I just got this question the other day, was, do I want to do like S.E. Smith Presents? Or I had changed it to The Worlds of S.E. Smith. And so I'm spending more time focusing on the worlds of S.E. Smith, because for me, these are all these different worlds that I'm creating. It's not just one thing. It's ebook. It's the variety of genres that I write. It's the paperback. It's the audiobooks. It's the foreign languages. It's the animation. It's the songs. So all of this are coming about. It's like my books where, I had all these series and they're coming together into a universe. They are the worlds of S.E. Smith. These are the worlds that I'm creating. So I'm focusing more on that type of branding through the evolution of understanding the books, myself, my business, and who I am and where I want to go. But as a creative, I'm very, very thankful to have someone who is organized that can recognize that and then help me contain it and put it into progress. You need somebody. I can come up with a lot of the ideas, but I need some help. How do I get it from here out there? That's where having that balance with working with someone who's more organized makes such a huge difference.
That's the important part also with branding is, you said this before, about recognizing strengths and weaknesses, and it's the same with building your team, recognizing those strengths.
And delegating it out.
Delegating is a good thing.
And that will be for another podcast.
Yes, it will be. So we hope that you've gotten at least one thing that you can action today on branding, professionally and personally, making it authentic, making it real for you.
And make sure that you find someone that can help you balance. So
Thanks, everyone.
anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and we'll talk to you next time.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. You know we've got way more information we want to share with you to increase your book sales. So please come and join me at facebook.com. Get my book out there.